Hey there, do you dream of escaping into a book? Maybe your escape includes a cozy cabin in the mountains or a magical town along the coast. Either way, you're in the right place. Welcome to Literary Escapes with me, Becky. This year on the podcast, we're exploring the United States. So every week I'm going to bring you a new book set in a different state. So let's see where we're going today. Welcome back to the Literary Escapes podcast. I am your host, Becky Lee, and we are continuing our trek across the United States. Today, we are stopping in Georgia, and we have author Ellie Hall with us. So welcome, Ellie.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
I am so excited to have you here. Georgia is right above where I live, so I am super familiar with at least parts of Georgia because whether it's 95 or 75, we have been up and down those interstates through Georgia so many times. so how did you choose Georgia for the setting of your book?
So my relationship with Georgia, you might not be happy to hear, is actually pretty limited.
That's okay.
So
yeah.
my husband and I, we have friends who live in the mountainous northern part.
Nice.
I've been to the coastal area several times. And I absolutely love the marshlands with the barrier islands and the Spanish moss drifting from the live oaks. It was just such a picturesque part of the country that I was like, oh, there has to be a story written here.
Yeah.
So my small town is completely fictional, but the seashore is where the Home Sweet Home series is set, and the town is called Butterbury.
Oh, fun. I love that. That's one of my favorite places, I think, ever is Savannah. And
Yes.
It's got a lot of that, the beautiful oak trees with the moss dripping down. It's on the coast and you've got, islands around it. So it's such a fantastic town. And
I agree wholeheartedly. It is so much character, and that's actually where the main character in Mr. and Mrs. Fix-It is from.
Okay.
And she's selected for a contest to compete for the coveted Mrs. Fix-It role on a home improvement show opposite Mr. Fix-It. So everything that I represent in Georgia is completely fictional. But I do love a small town with a main street and the quirky characters and the side roads that lead to romance. So that was what I was kind of going with when I envisioned Georgia as the setting for the series.
I love that. Yeah. The mountains in Georgia are also like some of my favorite because from where I live, it's not that far of a drive. And so to be able to Florida, it's super flat. We have a hill in our neighborhood. We're like 10 feet up, above sea level, and we're like in the high area. So
you're on the high ground.
We are. We don't have to worry about flooding here, man. So the Georgia's kind of, they've got the mountains, they've got the coast, they've got a lot going on there, which is pretty awesome.
They do, yeah. So that's where Home Sweet Home found its home. And I probably took some liberties. So if any Georgians are listening, forgive me if I got it wrong, but I mostly just kind of stuck with the small town vibe.
Do your books have food in them? I mean, are you kind of a foodie where you highlight food from different areas?
I have been told that when people read my books, they just assume they need to bring a snack with them because there is always food involved. So the main character is a chocoholic, and one of the central locations in the story is called the Starlight Diner, and it is pie galore. Nice. And so I also did Bubba's Barbecue, and so nice. I hit some high notes.
Some of the good ones,
has to offer.
That's awesome. I love that. Do you put recipes in your books at all, or on your website or anything?
Yeah, so not in this one particularly, but a lot of times I'll do that as like a bonus for a box set or a bonus if you subscribe to my newsletter. And I have a reader library with bonus scenes, deleted scenes, recipes, printables, coloring pages, playlists, all of that stuff. And there are quite a few recipes actually. And a few of my series, the one I'm thinking in particular actually takes place in Florida. Now that you mentioned that, it's in Blue Bay Beach, and that's on the west coast of Florida, fictional town again.
Yep.
Beautiful scenic area.
I love
And
the
each
West
of the books in
Coast.
that
Yeah.
series, yeah, it has a recipe that kind of goes with the story.
Oh,
It's not
fun.
particular to Florida necessarily, but
Yeah. That's
yeah,
awesome. I love that. So,
thank you.
did you grow up knowing you wanted to be an author?
So no, I am not one of those unicorns that was like, I always wanted to be an
Yeah.
author. My mom used to say, you should write a book someday. I was like, when I was a kid, I loved to read and, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then my dad actually was the one that really encouraged me. And he had me print out my very first manuscript I ever wrote. And it was like that thick, single-sided,
Nice.
double spaced for him to read. And he was such a sweetheart. He, made notes and corrections and the whole thing. And he's passed away now, but he kept it. And I found it in his things. And it was just
Aw.
like, so nice. And he bought me Microsoft Word for my computer. He's very encouraging. But it was
I love
around
that.
2007. We were on, we would take road trips to the beach or, wherever with our kids. They were small at the time. And I would make up stories about the secret lives of our cats while we were gone.
Oh, that's funny.
Just make up goofy things. I might see something, just to entertain them.
Awesome.
And, when they were little, they didn't have devices or anything. So it was just,
Yeah.
basically I would just see something on the side of the road and I would just let my imagination play. And we would get pretty silly and it probably didn't
awesome.
make any sense.
That's awesome. I love
if someone
that.
were to be listening in.
Do you have
Um,
animals in your books?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Almost every single book has an animal. Mr. and Mrs. Fix-It features, there's some raccoons, trying to think off the top of my head. But yeah, all my books either have pets or
Nice.
like zany animals.
Okay. Okay. Nice.
But sometimes it's just like a beloved pet. But there's in the 6th book in this series, there's an ostrich that breaks and enters into someone's house, and
I love that. Oh my gosh.
there's a llama that keeps crossing the road and like won't let traffic go by.
Oh, that's hysterical.
So anyway, yeah, so at some point I started, or around 2007, I started writing some of the stories down. I looked into publishing, and it looked like a serious uphill climb. I was like, I don't think I
Were
can do this
you
again.
looking at doing kids' books or were you thinking romance at that point?
Yeah, I was like very much in the kid world since my kids were
Yeah.
little.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but then when they started going to school, I kind of veered off course and I was like, well, I could try screenwriting because it's a different format.
Yeah.
And it's an art to be sure, as I learned. And I wrote a couple screenplays and those were more adult,
Okay.
romance type books or screenplays. But neither of those was really the right fit for me, I guess. Because it didn't really work out. And then probably around 2013, I dipped my toe into romance and I've never looked back. So
That's awesome.
it's been about a decade. And I've had a few pen names and I have a fantasy romance pen name as well. And but I have found my home sweet home in sweet romance, and that's where I'm happy. And
That's awesome.
that's a short version of my journey here.
That's a great journey because one of the things that I love hearing from authors is that there's so many different routes to get there. And
Absolutely.
you can do it self-published, you can do it traditionally published, you can do a hybrid of any kind, small press, whatever. You can get your MFA and known from like birth that you were going to be an author, or you can kind of stumble across it later, and all of it works.
Yeah.
So
all roads lead to books, hopefully.
And hopefully a finished story that you can hold in your hand one day, which
exactly.
Yeah, anybody who wants to write a book, they should get the opportunity to see their book in print. I think that's the most amazing feeling ever. So yeah, I think that's amazing. So let's talk about the Home Sweet Home series.
Sure.
And so it's set in Georgia, fictional town on the coast. And this first book is Mr. and Mrs. Fix-It Find Love. So just tell a little bit about what that story is about.
So this came about, it's kind of, this one's like a little more personal to me. Sometimes the ideas just kind of bloom in my mind, or something will inspire me. But this one came from a bargain my contractor husband and I struck. So he's a contractor, mostly interiors and kitchens and things. So after a long day at work, the last thing that he wants to watch are home improvement shows. And I really enjoy them.
He's like, you can come watch me at work any day, honey.
Yeah, it's been suggested. I kept hearing about Fixer Upper, the show with Joanne and
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so after several seasons, he finally gave in and he indulged me having control of a remote. And I could have watched it by myself, but like, what's the fun in that? And
Yeah.
I wanted to be able to ask him questions and just sort of see like, is this real?
Yeah.
So finally one night we watched, we didn't even get through a whole season, but we were watching and we were laughing about how we're like Chip and Joanna. But we could be pretty goofy and like not take things super seriously. Like they're super talented and seem like an amazing couple, but like their humor was very relatable.
Okay.
And so he asked me, he's like, do you have a Chip and Joanna? And I was like, I don't have a Chip and Joanna, referring to characters.
Right.
And I'd written a Carpenter hero, but no dynamic like that. And so he said, well, you should. And I mulled it over, I brainstormed, and I landed on the Home Sweet Home series. And so basically the gist is there are 4 women and they compete to land the coveted Mrs. Fix-It role on a fictional home improvement show opposite the hammer wielding stud. And there's a lot of little jokes about that in the book. Mr. Fix-It. And so his co-star was leaving, and so they needed to replace her. So none of the characters are based on the Gaines couple. Designing Happily Ever After is a show that the women that competed, they ended up getting their own show. So none of them became Mrs. Fix-It, although the main character, Luella Bell, ends up marrying Mr. Fix-It, but they don't end up
right, but she's not on the show.
Yeah. She's technically Mrs. Fix-It, but anyway, so they ended up getting their own show called Designing Happily Ever After. And there's a lot of comedic mishaps as they kind of navigate fixing things. And in our household, that my solution to anything is duct tape or tacks. Like I will fix anything. I was like, no, you can't do this. This is going to fall down. I'm like, I'll make it work.
Break out the duct tape.
Yep, always. So anyway, so they go into, they enter, I guess, like a partnership, and they have a show, and it kind of evolves as Fixer Upper, and they have like a brand and a little shop, and kind of like the Magnolia.
Yeah.
I guess I don't want to call it like headquarters in Texas. So they in the meantime, they all of course find love and get their own happily ever after. So
that's so fun. I love that your husband helped kind of come up with the idea.
Yeah. And for my end of the bargain, I had to make tacos every Tuesday for a month. So
that sounds like a reasonable deal.
It's no hardship if you love tacos as much as me. So
exactly. That's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, he's like, I'll watch this if you make tacos, and I'm like, okay.
If I must.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so funny. So you have a whole bunch of series.
I do.
Yeah, I was looking at that, and you've got a whole bunch of series, which I love. Do you tend to do like about a series a year? Is that or?
So right now I have 10 series I think that are completed, and I have a couple in the works.
Okay.
And so last year, 2023, I said I'm slowing down production because up until that point I'd been releasing a book a month for I think 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
And some of them are on the shorter side, like maybe 30,000 words, or so if you're not used to counting words, not most people are not. Yeah. That's a thinner book, but it's like maybe a half an inch thick.
Yeah.
But then I started writing really long books, and I was kind of getting a little burned out, and so I was like, okay, I'm going to scale back. And so I said in 2024 I'm going to publish less, and that was like my famous last words because I have gone in the opposite direction. And so my kids have moved out, so I do actually have more time on my hands.
Right.
I miss them terribly, but that's, you know, I'm like, well, I'm gonna fill the
That's what
time
we
somehow.
raise them for, right? I mean,
Yeah,
that's our hope that
yeah. So now I do have a little bit more time on my hands, and I fill it up like a goldfish in a bowl. I just keep expanding, and so yeah, I said the 10 series, and then I have a couple in the works in various stages of completion right now.
okay.
And I have, you know, billionaires, cowboys, small towns, Christmas, friend groups. I have a football and I have hockey. Hockey's in the works. The football is done.
Okay.
But no matter the characters or the plots, you always get sweet, swoony, and an emphasis on sweethearts and swoony heroes. And feel good inspirational stories with happily
I love
ever
that.
after. So that's the
Yeah.
through line. And you know, but each series has a little bit of a different
And are they
bent
all
on
mostly small town
most
settings?
of them. I
Yeah.
do have a couple that are they venture out more like in a city, like it's kind of like fictional New York City or
Right.
kind of thereabouts. And I actually have a fictional country which I come back to a lot. It's
Ooh,
called
fun.
Concordia. And I guess I can just basically make up whatever I want. I can have the big city, I can have the small town, and I've set both of my regular romance there, and I've set my plain fantasy romance there. So
Nice.
it's like an all-purpose
It's kind
country.
of fun to have places that you can, you know, interconnect your series. I
Yeah.
think that's a lot of
Yeah,
fun.
it's I've kind of created a story world in that way, which I wasn't really setting out to do that, but it kind of happened. So
Weren't setting out
so
to
yeah.
dominate the world and create your own world, but there you are.
Or if like you're looking for something and it doesn't quite fit, well, I guess I'm in the business of making things up. So I guess that's what I'll do.
Right. Right. I love that. So where is the favorite setting that you've had of your books?
Oh gosh, that's okay. So actually, it's so it's not out yet. And I have it releasing July 15th, July 31st, or August 1st. I forget which and then August 15th. I have three um, relatively short reads, like kind of each binge books, that's what I'm calling them. And they are set in Southern California, again, a fictional town, but it's kind of a conglomeration of my hometown and places that I have lived. And
Nice.
so I'm really thrilled about that. It was completely off the schedule. I just came up with it and I was like, oh, I'm going with this. And so I crammed it into the summer. But I tend to think people want to read a little bit, maybe, you know, shorter in the summer. There's a lot, you know, people
I
are
think it's
busy and
fun to be able to read a book at, you know, like in a weekend and
yeah,
go through a series quickly. And
yeah,
I'm a big fan of that. When they take
yeah,
me weeks to finish, that's like
yeah,
too much work.
yeah. I hear you.
So fun. So your made up country, where geographically is that approximately?
So Concordia is it's a little known, very wealthy
Of course.
nation just north of England,
Okay.
kind of up in that area. It's like an island country, and they have a lot of resources up there and technology, and
Of course they do.
basically like, you know, you can write some billionaires there if you want, or
Nice. Yeah.
some small town kind of like a little bit of that like English countryside slash Bavarian, you know.
Okay.
I have in one of the books there's like a little pretzel shop with those big Bavarian pretzels, and
Nice. Nice.
so
I want a pretzel now.
I have creative license here.
I love that. I think it's so fun when authors make up countries because that's like, you know, and they're always lovely and beautiful and have a great economy and they have a, you know, a handsome monarch or, you know, that kind of the royal
Exactly.
family, which it's also fun.
Yes, there is a royal family, and actually, the series that I was just talking about, it's called SoCal Summer Kisses. That's coming out this summer, and one of the main characters is she's actually a duchess from there. So they have their own peerage system. And I don't get too in the weeds with like how that works, but she comes to Southern California and, you know, what happens there stays there kind of thing. And, you know, she ends up falling in love and, you know, star-crossed because she's a duchess. So.
Well, it's fun. As a reader, I love when authors interconnect their series so that you meet a character from this one and it makes you want to go read that series. And, you know, I think that's awesome. So much
Thank
fun.
you. Yeah, I wrote a whole book. It's called Second Chance Sunset. And besides telling the story, my objective was to put a little Easter egg or a cameo or something like that from each of my series.
Oh, how
and
fun.
So that way readers, it's kind of an introductory book and, you know, kind of gives you an idea of like my writing style and, you know, that kind of thing. But then there's a reference hidden throughout. And so if you're a longtime reader, you might pick up on those. Yeah. And then new readers, I have a key in the back, like what each reference is. And so when I realized, I was like,
idea.
Yeah, thank you.
I love that. Yeah, that's a lot of fun, actually.
It was a little intricate to work it out, you know, and remember, because after a while I'm like, wait, which character, where were they from?
Yeah, and to go back and read takes a lot of time, and so it's
it was involved, but it worked out.
That's awesome. I love that. So what are you working on right now, writing wise?
So right now, I just finished the series that I was talking about, SoCal Summer Kisses, and I'm kind of in between. This is kind of a week off, quote unquote. I'm not actually off. I'm doing all of the administrative stuff that we authors do behind the scenes that is not writing. So catching up on promotions and making graphics and all of that stuff.
Nice.
But starting the first week of June, I'm diving into Christmas.
Because of course,
it is always funny. And it's happened several times where I end up writing a Christmas book in the summer. So being in the Northern Hemisphere, summer is not when we have Christmas time.
Especially, you know, if you live anywhere where it's hot, it's hard to get in the Christmas mindset. You can't sit. Well, I guess you can crank your AC down and put a Christmas sweater on, but
I'll put on a candle or I'll play some Christmas music in the background. That's what I did last summer. I was like, okay, how am I going to get into the frame of mind? And that one's called the Kiss class. It was originally called the Mistletoe Kiss class, but to fit everything on the cover, I think it's just going to be the Kiss class. So that is, I have it outlined and everything ready to go starting next week. So this week I'm kind of taking a breather and catching up on things and chatting with you. And so
I love that. That is so fun. I love that. So thank you so much for joining me today. And thank you for popping into the book club and being part of that with me. I thoroughly appreciate and enjoy that.
Oh, it's a delight. And I really have enjoyed getting the emails with all of the different books from the 50 states. That's such a great idea. I really have enjoyed traveling around without leaving home.
I know. I have had so much fun reading new authors, different styles, different, you know, obviously different settings, but it's so fun to just meet and read so many new authors. It's been such a great year. For the last 3 years, I had a book club and I would do an author a month. And so I'm like, okay, next year I have to pare it down. And so instead of 12, I did 50. So I don't know what I was thinking.
I think we're of similar minds here. I'm going to do less. Oh, nope. I'm doubling it.
I was thinking about that when you were talking about, I'm going to pare it down. And
famous last words. I tell you
how that works. Yeah. That's funny. Well, thank you again for joining me. This has been a lot of fun. And thank you for sharing your books with us.
Well, I appreciate it so much and have a great summer.
Thank you. Yes.
Thanks for joining me today. If you'd like to be part of the Read Across the U.S. Book Club, I'd love to have you join us. There is a link in the show notes. So just head down there and click and we will welcome you in. So see you in the book club, I hope. Have a great day and we'll see you next week with a new episode.